Welcome everyone, and thank you for watching our online talk on positive psychology. I am Naya, and this lecture is organized by Sibe Utrecht, the Student Association for International Relations in Utrecht. We also organize other activities such as drinks, parties, and trips abroad. There's also an intellectual activity every Tuesday. However, due to circumstances surrounding the coronavirus, these are currently mostly online. Um, Tonight's talk will feature Vincent, Duindam, and Sibe Doosje. So welcome to Vincent and Sibe.
Thank you.
Vincent Duindam is the author of the book Leren Liefhebben about positive spirituality in relationship, and Sibe Doosje is the founder of Humor Lab and expert on humor. The course of the evening will go as follows. Firstly, they will both give a short presentation about their expertise for around 15 minutes. After this, we will have a short break. And after the break, there's also half an hour for the public to ask questions on YouTube and Facebook, which will start at approximately 8:30. So if you have any questions while watching, feel free to post them in advance. And then I would like to ask Sibe to start us off and explain some more about positive psychology and humor.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can.
Good. I hope everyone can hear me. So, let's see. Yes. Just a minute, Maya. I put you in the corner so that I can see my slides. Welcome, everyone. So, as Maya said, I'm Sibe Doosje. I work at the Department of Clinical Psychology, and my topic is humor, sense of humor, and humorous expressions. And I'm very happy to be here. The thing is, it's a little bit odd, actually, because I'm talking to a screen. Usually I have audience, and sometimes I hope that they laugh, because if your topic is humor, there should be something to laugh about. Well, we'll see. And if you find this very boring or maybe offensive even, let me know in the chat. So for now, I have a number of slides. Corona is weird. I'm going to talk a little bit about art, humor, especially relating to Corona, because, of course, we live in the Corona crisis, and there's a boom of Corona humor. Then I'll explain something to you about the relationship between humor and tragedy, humor in politics, about hidden messages. That I have two explanations of humor and tragedy, and hidden messages. And then I will give you a summary. And if we have time, I can show you a great video by a group of Italians, but I don't know if I have time. Maya will kill me when I take too long. So, okay, so Corona is weird. Because we now have a society which is at war with COVID-19, and in the Netherlands, I don't know where you are, but in the Netherlands, we have more strict measures to fight the virus. And the consequences of that war, that was quite remarkable. When in March this all started, there was a huge wave of positive psychology. We all loved each other. We made jokes. We did good things for other people. We were grateful. We applauded for all these nurses and doctors that were fighting in the hospital for our lives. So actually, COVID-19 is something negative because you can die of it, but there was also a response which was quite positive. I thought that was remarkable. And humor is in between that war against COVID and positive psychology. I'll give you some examples. First, I'll show you this short, well, it's a very long video, but I'll show you a part of it, because a number of people during COVID were expressing living tableaus. That's you take a painting, a famous painting from history, and then you are going to enact the painting. And I'll show you some things people did.
I'm dancing all night. You're holding me tight, and maybe I might. Sitting on the dance floor, you are on my mind. Hoping you can see me through the crowd. I know it ain't the right thing, wishing you this way, but I do.
Nou, dit is een voorbeeldje van wat mensen zoal thuis deden. Dat is eigenlijk, zie je hier de creativiteit die je met humor kunt hebben. En mensen gingen allerlei dingen maken en ook die schilderijen dus uitbeelden. En ja, links dat vrouwtje heeft een soort wezel in de hand. Hè, en rechts is dat dus een spuitbus geworden. Dus gewoon een moderne versie van het schilderij. Nou, dit zag je ook, hè? Corona Lisa, dat is dan een woordspeling, ook humor, ook best wel leuk, misschien. Nou, Vincent moet er niet zo om lachen. En dit is Vincent, straks zien jullie de echte Vincent, maar dit is Vincent van Gogh, met een mondkapje om zijn ene oor, want het andere oor is er natuurlijk. Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. So, from where on did I sorry about this. Oh, this is something that goes wrong. So every time things go wrong, you can laugh, right? So this is Corona Lisa, this is wordplay, and this is Vincent van Gogh with a mouth cap. The other ear, of course, is off. What does this all mean? Humor and tragedy. I think, why is humor a positive psychology trait? I think that humor is very strongly connected to tragedy, actually. And I don't know who this quotation is from. It's Mark Twain, some people say. It says, humor is tragedy plus time. And that is interesting, because the further away tragedy is, the more chances humor gets. Another one you could think of is humor is tragedy plus distance. For example, if a tragedy happens far away, it's easier for us to make jokes about them. I've had a stand-up comedy training of one afternoon by Harry Glotsbach. He's a famous Dutch comic. And so we were training in the afternoon, and in the evening we would do our gig for an audience, our colleagues, actually at a personnel party. So his first question during that training was, what bothers you in this organization? What bothers you in this organization? So he wanted us to say what actually we got annoyed about. And I thought that was a very typical question. And if you look at stand-up comedy comedians, you will see that they all talk about things that bother them, about misery, especially their personal misery. So I also performed during that evening. And during that evening, well, it wasn't very good, I think. It was pretty bad. But afterwards, I said, well, what did you think? You didn't laugh very loudly. And people said, well, we thought that you were very brave to do that, to go on stage and tell us your misery and make jokes about it. So, and that's part of the popularity of stand-up comedians, is that they have the guts to do it. And for humor, you do need some guts. So please read the picture on the right. If you're a slow reader, you haven't read it yet, but Vincent saw it very quickly. So I can hear his laughter. I think this is funny. If there are any Republicans in the audience, I'm sorry. I didn't want to insult you, because humor can also be insulting. Now, Sarah Cooper, you see on the left, she's a comedian, and she imitates Donald Trump. And
don't forget, we have more cases than anybody in the world. But why? Because we do more testing. When you test, you have a case. When you test, you find something is wrong with people. If we didn't do any testing, we would have very few cases. They don't want to write that. It's common sense. So we test much more, many, many times. South Korea, you hear about? I spoke with the president of South Korea, spoke with many different presidents, prime ministers. They can't believe what we've been able to do on testing. They can't believe what we've been able to do on ventilators. We're sending them ventilators. Other countries, Italy, Spain, other countries, France is having tremendous problems. We're helping them with ventilators.
Okay, so what we see here, and I would really like to teach you this, is that you look at humor not as something that is just funny, but also as something that contains hidden messages. So if you look at Sarah Cooper, she is doing a parody on Trump's confusing communications. So there's a critical note in the humor. And the reason that this is acceptable is that it is humor. So humor is sort of a permit to criticize. Also, the picture with the pigs is something that is, for Democrats, this would be very funny. It's about Trump's political background, and that he himself is called a pig by some people. So a joke expresses a lot without being explicitly insulting. That doesn't mean to say that jokes cannot be insulting. We've had a cartoon crisis, for example, where a Danish cartoonist drew Mohammed, and in his head scarf, he wore a bomb. And this has led to protests, and the cartoonist needed to be guarded. It actually is still guarded by police because this was very insulting for Islamic people. So humor is not harmless. So what have I told you? I have told you that humor can transform tragedy, like it can transform tragedy on a societal level, but also personal tragedy, like in stand-up comedy. And it allows expression of taboos or critical thoughts in an acceptable way. And the very nice thing about humor is that it is creative, and especially intellectual people. I hope some intellectual people are listening right now. They really appreciate humor as a creative thing. So humor should be creative. If I said to you, I'll tell you a joke, most of you wouldn't be that much interested. Thank you for your attention. I hope you have many questions. It was pretty weird to give a presentation in this way, but I hope during the question hour that we will discuss what I just told you. Maya, do I still have time? Oh, is Maya still there?
Yes, sorry.
Do I still have time or no?
You still have a little time, but it's also okay to give the stage to Vincent.
Can I show them a short the video?
Yes, sure.
Just a short piece.
No
corona, no corona. The days are getting longer, my cabin fever stronger. Oh, do to bed, sit on my couch now, I must sit in my pajamas.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was my encore.
Thank you very much, Sibe, for teaching us more about humor and the way it can help us in crises. And I would like to now give the stage to Vincent, who will tell us a little bit more about positive psychology and the link with other forms of psychology and how it came to be. So take it away.
Thank you very much. I'm still looking at the slide of...
oh, yes, I'll stop sharing, Vincent.
Still
yes.
sharing? Here we are again. Yes, I'm also delighted to communicate to you in this very strange way. I'm teaching at Utrecht University for 40 years now. My parents said to me, you can study anything you want except psychology. So everybody guess what I studied, psychology, of course. And I'd like to start with a reaction to Sibe. I liked his presentation very much. And what I want to bring is a couple of advices or tips from positive psychology to bring more balance in your life. And my top 10, my ninth was about humor. And it's by Oscar Wilde. You may know Oscar Wilde, a famous Irish playwright. And he said, taking yourself seriously is the original sin. Nou, for the Dutch people among us, jezelf serieus nemen is de erfzonde. Taking yourself seriously is the mother of all sins. And I've found that intriguing. So taking yourself seriously, you better laugh about yourself, it's the original sin. And I was thinking about young people and old people like me. You've got a self that you show to others on Instagram, and wherever you show a great picture, you've got your self-image, which must be held in the air, which must be great, and having lovely meals with friends and being ever so happy. If you're trying to hold that in the air, it keeps you stuck at the surface. Because if you don't take that self seriously any longer, that superficial self, maybe you can go to your center, to your deeper self, be more at ease, more at peace. So this is the first spontaneous improvisation as far as Sibe's lovely talk. So what I want to do is, being 40 years in psychology, it's almost half a century. I'm a very old man, but also a very happy man, thank grace. And when I want to take you with me on my travel through psychology. When I started, I wanted to know all about people, about myself, and what are the forces we are driven by, what are our drives. So I was very enthusiastic about Sigmund Freud. This is the Traumdeutung, 800 pages. It's deterministic. It explains our funny habits, our neurotic ideas. And then later there came Skinner, behaviorism. Everybody is conditioned. We are all fully determined. And at that young age, I thought that's really wonderful. We can change the world if we change the reinforcement contingencies. We can change the world, and everybody's determined, but maybe that's not so much a problem. But then I grew older and I hope a bit wiser, and I found humanistic psychology. Many of you know it, for instance, Rogers and Maslow. It was not about determinism and being determined. It was about freedom, being able to choose, being able to develop, self-development, self-enhancement, growth, fulfillment. And even later, when I was, say, 50 or something, I started meditating and reading Buddha and other books. And my daughter said to me, gee, normal dads get into a midlife crisis, buy a big and run after other women, but you must sit on your couch and meditate. But yes, that's what happened. So what I now will do in this short period of time is give you a few tips, ideas, advices from combination of positive psychology, and later on I'll jump to the Buddha and other friends. And the first advice is say yes to now. At this point in time, you may be stressed, you may be busy, you may be hindered by Corona, by not meeting people. But the most important thing is accept it. It is as it is. Say yes to it and make the best from it. If you do not accept the situation as it is, you've got two problems. You've got the situation as it is, and your resistance against it, and your resistance, your chagrin about it is an extra problem layer. It's like I often compare to the alcoholist. If you've got a problem, you start drinking, you've got two problems. So if your life isn't easy and you have a fuss with it not being easy, then you've got two problems. So if your life is a bit rough, say yes to it. It is a bit rough. It's okay. It's fine, and then it will get easier. The second advice is a very old one. It is from Epictetus. He was a Greek living in the ancient city of Rome, and he started as a slave. And he said, if you have a problem, it is never the situation, it's always your thoughts about the situation. If your neighbors are noisy, the problem is not your neighbors being noisy, the problem is your thoughts about your neighbors being noisy. So always start within, work on your thoughts, change your thoughts, and then the world will change with it. So Epictetus is a very wise man from 2000 years ago, and we've got Albert Ellis, is a famous psychologist from last century, and he basically took this and made it more psychological jargon, and he started the rational emotive therapy, which says exactly the same. If if your boyfriend or girlfriend leaves you, don't say, "Oh, terrible! I'm worthless. It's horrible." But go and look at your thoughts, and are these thoughts really true? You'll meet somebody much more nice. So the first thing is, don't make a fuss with what happens. The second is, look at your thoughts before you look at the situation. And Albert Ellis got a lovely quote. People often have pressure on themselves. I must do this. I must do this. And he says, mustification. I must. Mustification is pernicious. And he had a phrase. I'm not sure if I ought to repeat it. Maybe a hindrance to some people. But in fact, he said, mustification is pernicious. Masturbation is delicious. That's what he said. But the main thing to remember is, don't say, I must this, I must that. So that's the third one. Another one is compassion. When I started my study psychology, it was very critical about myself and critical about other people. These always go hand in hand. If you're critical about yourself, you're critical. So I where have I got it? I bought this, and I in Dutch I wrote on it, making myself pure, cleansing. It's almost like Stalin, the dictator. I must rebuild myself. I must, with violence, change myself. But that's never a good starting point. Start with compassion, with friendliness about yourself and other people. And then you can change. If you fully accept yourself and the situation, change is much more likely than when you say, I must this, I must that. Because as Freud already said, the repressed will return. And in ancient Indian scriptures, it's the same thing. The return of the repressed. What you resist, persist. So in Holland, we have, I'm very happy to tell, we have a professor of positive psychology, and he and his wife often write together, Ernst Bohlmeier, And here's this book. It's in Dutch is compassie als sleutel tot geluk. So in English, compassion is the key to happiness. If you're compassionate with yourself, compassionate with others, much more will be open. If you really things must this way, then you lock yourself up and others up, and you miss opportunities. So this is the fourth one. I'm looking at the clock. Be compassionate. Another thing, be not perfectionist. If you're too perfectionistic, you have a problem. And we've got in Utrecht, I'm not sure if he is retired already, but we had Wilmar Schauffele. Is he retired or is he still among us? He's a professor at Utrecht.
He's retired, Vincent.
Okay, but still his ideas are great, and I'll give you one of them. Is if you are too perfectionist, you're much more prone to get burned out. Much perfectionism, much burnout. So don't put too high expectations. Be moderate, be compassionate. And a little example from my own life. When I was still young, I was quite busy. Our daughters were young, and we were caring for them together. And at that time, I was famous because I wrote on caring fathers, and I was on television, and I had a blog in the Bell. And my chief, my professor, said to me during an interview, "You don't like to do something extra, do you?" In Dutch, you doet niet graag wat extra's. You're not very. And I had a great laugh because I thought I was doing quite fine. But she was right. I wasn't going to promotions too often. I wasn't too often at lunches. I wasn't too often at meetings. But I was teaching and it was fine. I was researching. It was fine. So I was happy in what I did. I had my priorities, and I didn't like meetings too much. So she was quite critical to me, and I was very kind to her, and I laughed and said, "Yeah, you're right. I don't like to do very much extra. So give the laugh. Don't be too." Additionally, by this I do not mean be slack or don't do your best or do not be interested or lay on your couch or watch television and drink beer. No, of course not. But take your priorities. Think, what is the thing I really want to do in my life? And in my case, that was studying caring fathers, taking care of my daughters, and saying hello to the press. And so in your case, follow your heart. And this is further advice. You've got different kind of motivations. You've got intrinsic motivation. This comes from you. This is really what you really want to do. You follow your heart. You love to do it. Do that. Follow your heart. Do what I always done. What I wanted to do, and I felt very much like writing a book in Dutch about caring fathers. My professor said, "Please don't do it. Write 10 English articles. Is much better." But I loved writing this book for a much larger audience in Dutch, so I did, and it was fine. And extrinsic motivation is I do it because the status, the money, the job, the car. Studies show if you're working from extrinsic motivation, you're much less happy. But if you do it because you love to do it, that's great. So I'm looking at the clock. I've got 2 minutes left, I think. It's basically a top 10, but yes, what I like very much also is do not concern yourself with the results. Love what you're doing. When I was writing my book, I loved writing the book and not, it may be a bestseller. Choose what you want to do, follow your heart, and then be with that. Be in the moment and don't look. If you're playing tennis, you're also not looking at the scoreboard, and then you miss the ball. So that's an important thing. Another thing is balancing, equilibrium, breaks, also very important. Yes, often people get too much on their plates and they promised it, and so they do it. But sometimes I've got too much on my plate, and then I mail or I call and say, "I'm sorry, but it's too much. I can't do this." So do less, but do it because you love it, and that will bring you somewhere. Another point, maybe the final, and then I'll take. The wonderful book is the Bhagavad Gita. It's from Indian spirituality, from Hinduism. Do things with attention, with one pointed attention. Be with what you do. And I've got a quote which I always, I'm teaching, and at times I see students, maybe you're doing it right now, and they're, so with their, when you're teaching with their smartphone, and if you do several things at the same time, the quality of all of them gets less. So I think I want to finish with a quote from the Bhagavad Gita, and it is: the disunited mind is far from wise. How can it meditate? How can it be at peace? When you know no peace, how can you know joy? So if you do a lot of things at the same time, they won't have the quality as when you do one thing really with your heart. And that's for now. I've got more tips, but my time's up. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vincent. We will have time to go into your other tips in a little.
I have a document. We can put it. It's Dutch, I'm afraid, but still, I can mail it to you, and it can be disseminated.
Yes. But for now, we are going to take a little 5-minute break, so everyone can get something to drink, ask their question on Facebook and on YouTube, and we'll see you in a little bit.
Okay.
Welcome back, everyone. We will now have time to answer everyone's questions on Facebook and on YouTube. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. I saw that before the break there were already some questions coming in, but I would like to start with a question from myself. And I was wondering, how can students benefit from positive psychology and this way of thinking? So I was wondering if you would like to explain a little bit more about that, Sibe or Vincent.
Well, I think that if I take up one of Vincent's tips, is that sometimes we think that the answer is in the situation, but we are thinking in a certain way about these situations. For example, one of the forms of thinking that is very common is problematic thinking. So I experience problems. Nobody thinks, few people think in solutions. Whereas we have an approach which is called, what is it called? It's solution-focused psychotherapy, for example. You think in quite another way. So if you change your thinking about the situation, you can feel much happier. Right? I think that is what Vincent also tried to say. Vincent?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I fully agree. It was a wonderful explanation. And additionally, I've got a top 10, and they're all practically useful, but I will now focus on an issue we have not really, well, Sibe mentioned it shortly, which is gratitude. Even any situation can give you reason for gratitude. We're alive, we're breathing, we're studying, we're young. You are young, I'm not young, but still I'm great. So and the thing is, being unhappy about the situation and not grateful will not bring you to happiness. If you really have a problem with this situation and you're really fighting the situation, and you don't like it and you're angry about it, that will not take you. The route to happiness is not by way of unhappiness. So if you got to start learning to see also positive aspects of the situation, and they're there if you really are looking good, and that will open up avenues, and it will change the situation. Maybe not instantly that Corona is away, but options even within the restrictions. So the same Ernst Bollmeyer I mentioned also wrote, I've got it here, also wrote a book on gratitude. I'm looking at my well, it takes too much time. But he's got a book on gratitude, and so gratitude is an attitude you can learn, and you can keep on a gratitude diary. You can have it as a mindset, and this changes the situation, because both psychologists and spiritual friends from the Bhagavad Gita and Buddha both are agreeing on one thing. The external world is a kind of reflection of your internal world. So if you try to first change your internal world, as Ellis, for instance, said, then the outer world will reflect this. So if I may sing two lines, some of you may know the famous pop group The Doors, and they sing, "People are strange when you're a stranger. Faces look ugly when you're alone." So if you work on yourself, be happy with yourself, other people will change. They're no longer ugly.
Can I give an example? Because I think during my presentation, something funny happened. All of a sudden, I was starting to speak Dutch, So and unfortunately, we had Maya, who was registering that. I'm Dutch, so I know Dutch very well. But I don't know why I started talking Dutch. It just happened. And previously, that I would have looked at that as a mistake and as a failure. Mm-hmm. And maybe it still is, but I tend to be more lighthearted about these things, and actually they can be quite funny when you look back at them. And I often say that to young teachers that start teaching. I say, make a mistake once in a while, maybe on purpose, maybe not on purpose. But if you make mistakes, things will get livelier and they will get more interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I already see a lot of questions coming in. And I would like to start with a question from Kayan. And she thanks you both for the eye-openers and found it very fun and inspirational. But she has a question for Sibe. She says, humor is important and it makes it easier to talk and point out our taboos as well. But you mentioned that a part about that is that it can cross a line. And her question is, where do we have to draw the line between humor and freedom of speech and being insulted?
Well, that is a very interesting question. And I don't think that I can really give, of course I can draw a line. This is the line. Okay. But I think that we should be sensible with our humor, in the sense that we think proactively and empathetically about what this humor would do to others. On the other hand, I think that we should not restrict comedians at all. I strongly believe, like Vincent, I'm curious to hear what Vincent thinks about this, because Vincent talked about freedom, and I think freedom is very, very important. However, if freedom limits the growth of other people, I think there we cross a line.
Vincent, can you
Yes,
elaborate a little bit on that?
I had a kind of ethical problem last year. I also coordinate the first study our students do, their first empirical research. And I always say you can basically study anything you want. And now here was a group of students who wanted to see if men and women had other kind of sense of humor, thought other things were funny, and the hypothesis were men were more sexist, and they made lists and jokes about sexist joke and also racist jokes, and I rejected it. I thought about it, and I thought I don't want. So for me, that was asked for a line. That was for me a line. This can hinder people, disturb people, establish, reinforce certain ideas about men and women, about ethnic groups. So that was a line for me, but which I had last year.
Okay.
I don't know if Sibe agrees, but
yeah, well, I mean, it's not just with humor. I mean, for example, should we invite stupid people to talk shows? I mean, because they have an opinion, but and the opinion, you may find the opinion stupid, but should that limit us to not invite stupid people? I think we should invite all people to the studio to talk about things, and then we can discuss, and then we can be in contact with each other, and then we can try to convince each other. So I think that's more important than just the stupidity, because I think that's stupid.
I have another question coming in, which is, do you have any thoughts on how we can be more free from expectation and and reduce stress? So do you have any thoughts on that?
well,
I think that would be something for Vincent, actually. Vincent, yeah.
Undoubtedly for you as well, but I'll start. There's a famous, in Eastern spirituality, a famous quote, and it's in the seeing is the freeing. So if you're run by your expectations, if you're like an automaton run by your expectations, if you go almost unconscious through life because you do what your expectations ask from you, and you're not conscious of it, then you're in the prison of it. At the moment that you watch yourself, that you see yourself. I love meditation. I can advise to anybody, but if it's not something for you, you can also walk in the woods, step on your bike, go, whatever. If you take time to be with yourself, to slow down your thoughts and to see what am I really doing to myself. People, the most difficult things people have in their lives are their own thoughts. Your own thoughts can be your friends or your enemies. So as long as you not identify with your thoughts, but see them, and then you can, and be friendly with them. Don't repress them. Don't say, oh God, I'm doing it again, I hate myself. That's not the way. Be compassionate. Say, oh, here comes the thought, I must do this, I must do that. I see that thought, I welcome it. It comes and it goes. That's very important. So see it, be compassionate with it, but don't identify with it. Maybe there's more to say, but maybe Sibe has also some thoughts about it.
Well, it's very well put, actually. But it's a struggle, I think. And sometimes some expectations are good.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, and we use expectations to sort of be able to respond in an appropriate way to other people. So they have their use. But if you are, like Vincent says, led by expectations automatically, then that may limit you and also other people.
Yes, maybe it's nice to mention here voice dialogue. Here, voice dialogue is a Jungian, Carl Jung, a Jungian way of teaching, therapeutic, but also a play form, which makes visible all the different aspects of yourself. So we all have got the inner critical person, the wise woman, the wise man, the playful child, our vulnerable parts. And there are therapy forms in which all those aspects of yourself are given a chair, and they tell, yes, that's how Vincent is very self-critical. I came in his life because of his mother, and I tried to protect him. And then you see all those aspects of yourself placed in space by voice dialogue therapist. And then you yourself stand behind the chairs and you see, oh yeah, this is my vulnerable child. This is my critical voice. They are welcome in my life, but they must not be the only voice. There's a harmony of voices, and I'm the awareness, I'm the space in which all these aspects of myself can have their place. And this awareness is what in Eastern philosophy is called the higher self, the Atman, the Adam. And the little selves are conditioned selves, conditioned by the past. And those are the selves we should laugh about. As Oscar Wilde says, taking yourself seriously is the original sin. If I think I am my critical voice, that's a problem. So make it visible, make it, see it, have compassion with it, place it in a larger room and play with it.
Yes. I think that segues nicely into another question, which is from Maike. And she also thanks you for the interesting talk, and she would like to hear your opinion on the mental health care currently in the Netherlands. Right now, you could say that it's mostly based on cognitive therapy, and she is wondering how could we use positive psychology and or humor more in therapy. And maybe it's nice if you can explain what cognitive therapy is for anyone who doesn't know. And I think that's Sibe's expertise.
Well, yes, I work at the Department of Clinical Psychology, so I should be able to do it, I guess. Well, yeah, we have cognitive behavioral therapy, which has been quite successful and proven to work for a number of problems and disorders. It's based on the idea of that our thoughts cause and our behaviors cause our emotions. It's an important thought, as Vincent also explained with rational emotive therapy. But sometimes I think also, I think that maybe we should laugh a little bit more at our problems. And there is a form of therapy that does that. It's called provocative therapy. and there the therapist ridicules not the patient, but the ideas of the patient by exaggerating them, for example. So I'll give you an example that I've seen. There was a demonstration of provocative therapy, and there was a woman who was worried about her son. He was in primary school, and she thought that he would that things when he would go to high school, he would get problems and things would get worse and worse. So she was worried. And what the therapist said, that was in front of a space full of nurses, because it was a nursing conference, he said, well, actually, you're right. Your son is going to experience problems and they will get worse all the time. I'll tell you what happens when he comes to high school. First of all, he will start drinking, and then he will get the wrong friends. And at a certain point, he will discover that he's gay. But also, he will, after the drinking is not enough anymore. So he will start using drugs. And then when he finished high school and he starts studying, he will not finish his study. He will end up in Amsterdam in very dark places, having sexual encounters, and then he will get HIV and die. So he was saying all this to that woman, and at a certain point, and because you think, well, this is terrible, you make things worse, and the nurses in the room, they you could hear that they thought that this you can't do this. This is unethical. Whereas what was very interesting is that the woman, it was an actual problem of that woman on stage. The woman at a certain point started laughing because she saw that she was exaggerating these worries, and the only thing he did was that he enlarged them to demonstrate to her what she was doing. So that's just an example, and I don't say that you can do that with all problems, but I think joking and a sense of humor is important for therapists and for clients alike. Actually, I think that if someone's depressed and they start making jokes, that's a sure sign that someone is recovering, actually.
Okay.
Lovely explanation. Yes, it's almost a paradoxical assignment, as you said, making it bigger and bigger. About positive psychology and therapy. Incidentally, or if it is incidentally, I got lay hand on a books by Mia Leijsen, is professor of clinical psychology in Leuven, Belgium, and she wrote the book Time for the Soul. She grew up in humanistic psychology, Rogers and Maslow, and she also uses positive psychology. And she explains a wonderful method. It's called focusing. I'm not sure if we've got enough time to speak on it at length, but it's about also, and I love that very much because a lot of things are in our heads, but we also, the body is very important also, and the body remembers things from the past that we may have forgotten. So she works on focusing. It's spirituality and positive psychology, and it means relaxing, really relaxing. Then saying what's the thing, a problem I want to think about, and then becoming very still, not oriented to the outside world, but to the body, and asking the body for an image or a word, and then it is really surprising what you come up with, because then the rational mind has been put aside for a while, and your own body, your muscle consciousness, your inner, comes up with very creative things, almost like dream-like things, and then there comes some image and some words, and you say to the body, is that correct? And then your body relaxes and you feel great, and then you and the therapist go and talk about it. So this book, Time for the Soul, I'm writing a piece about it as we're speaking. So if anybody should be interested, to put it in the group app. It is about positive psychology and bringing not only the mind, but bringing the body also in, because the body is very valuable source of information for us in creativity. And so I could advise it to anybody. It's a lovely book.
Thank you very much. We also have a question from Benjamin, and he asks, why is it that humor and Trump go so well together? Is it a coping mechanism to block out the scary or tragic events that occur or are worsened by or because of him? And I think that's also a nice question for Sibe.
Yes, that's a very nice question. Well, I don't know if I agree that Trump is good for humor, actually. Maybe when we look back at it, Trump was very bad for humor because it is so easy. He says so many stupid things, and not only that, because you can think that he says intelligent things, but he doesn't seem to care what he says. That's very interesting. So if you make jokes about someone who cares about what they say, then this humor might have an effect on the person. And in this case, I think humor, I don't know, I think Trump blocks out a lot, but he also blocks out the humor. I'm not sure about this. We should ask him, actually, at a certain point in time. He blocks it out, but I don't think that he really cares. And that is necessary for humor to have an effect. And actually, Trump is a very interesting case for humor scholars, because I don't know many people who do not have a sense of humor, but he is one of them. For example, there was an incident that one of his press officers had to explain that he was making a joke when he spoke. So they have to explain that he made a joke. It is not clear at the moment that it was a joke, so everyone takes it seriously. But it was such a bad statement, apparently, that Trump said, "Well, tell them that it's a joke." Actually, that's my hypothesis. That's so he is a very rare case of someone with very little sense of humor. He rarely laughs. Also, you should look at it. It's quite extraordinary.
It has been said that the sense of humor is the line between humans and other animals.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also have a question.
Well, Trump's a pig, right?
That's my joke.
I also have a question for Vincent.
Yeah.
Which is from Susanna. And she says, many non-scientific movements use positive psychology as a trend, which seem to be creating some pressure for happiness and a tribe of positive yes-sayers. And can you give tips on how to recognize the misusage of positive psychology as well?
Yeah, it's a very good question, because sometimes I give a presentation on positive psychology, and the expectations of people are that's not serious. Is you can do anything you want. Visualize you're rich, and you're rich. Be positive and you be happy. And that's an enormous simplification. So it's a good question. It's not being irrealistic. It is also seeing the darker sides, and also everybody's got difficult things and loss in their lives. You've got to deal with them and to work with that. So it's a very good question. The important thing is being honest to yourself, not being too critical, not having unrealistic expectations, following your heart, having fun in what you do. The nasty kind of positive psychology is showing on Instagram and Facebook all kind of lovely things that are made up that are not really you. This image building and making yourself bigger, and which is enhancing your ego in the spiritual sense, but being more modest in a way and enjoying little things and being grateful for the weather and the falling of the leaves and loving what you do, teaching or whatever you do. So it's being honest to yourself, realistic expectation, loving what you do, choosing what you do, not being led by the expectations of others. Also the realistic expectation that one should be always happy. If you're not happy, you're a loser. That's not what's meant by it. It's and if I can go one step further from psychology to spirituality, there's the more superficial layer of yourself, which is played about by the external circumstances. Happy if something good is happening, and unhappy if something difficult is happening. But below that, if you are in touch with your real center, there's a joy which is more deep than superficial happiness, which can be there steadily if you meditate, if you walk, if you don't hurry too much, if you're not working on your image all the time, if you're not being here but wanting to be there, if you're not only focused on the results. So this is very short, a few pointers.
Well, can I say something about this? Because I think it is quite difficult, and I'm sorry that I can't see you, the person who asked me the question, but I think it is sometimes very difficult if you see all the things that are said, all the movements in positive psychology that you see, all the gurus that you see, and if you feel insecure in this world, or if you're afraid, or if you want to develop but don't know how, all this comes to you, and you have to make a choice, right? So you have to make a choice what is good for you. And I think that there's a lot in what Vincent says, is that something that I would call intuition. If it feels good to you, if it feels, then you should do it. And it doesn't matter to me what it is that is good for you, because I don't think that there are recipes. I don't think, and gurus say that there are recipes. There are no recipes. You should find out for yourself. And I think that your body and your emotions and your center is very well capable of helping you choose.
Yeah, sure. I couldn't agree more.
Thank you. We also have several questions coming in from Valentina and Talia, who wants to know a little bit more about humor in therapy. And Talia is wondering, is provocative therapy part of positive psychology then? And if you could talk a little bit more about treatments regarding positive psychology.
For Sibe,
Yeah.
Maybe I should give you an example, because I use solution-focused techniques myself in when I'm tutoring students. I have one success story, so be my follower. But I'll tell you the success story, and the success is in the person, but the success is also in the technique. So one of the things I typically try to get at in a situation. So I'm a tutor. I've been a tutor of hopeless cases, actually. So people who had been, so the bachelor's 3 years, and this guy was in his 7th year or something. So he had studied 4 years longer. And of course, there was a number of other problems that he had, and he was also getting separated from his parents. He was struggling with the relationship with his parents, and he didn't know where to go, etc., etc. But yeah, I am his tutor, and I should focus on his study problems. That's what I do. So I said, yeah, we can talk about all these things, but I think if you're really bothered by those things, you should go to a psychologist, not to me. But I can help you with your study. And an important question to me is the miracle question. I usually don't say that it is the miracle question, but it doesn't matter. You can do that anyway. And the miracle question is, if you wake up tomorrow morning, all your problems are solved. So, and now my question to you is, what has changed? So all your problems are solved. And then I ask, what has changed? And it's a pretty inviting question. Most people manage to give an answer. And what he said, well, I rise very early at 9 o'clock. I drink some coffee, and at 9:30 I'm behind my books, studying for my next exam, and I'll be planning my whole week. I will sleep better. I will go to the library to study with others. So there's a bunch, and the nice thing of the question is that the person is not focusing on his problems. He's already voicing the solutions, and the solutions I don't really have to explain that, but the solutions that the person mentions are the goals that he should work on, and then we make a plan how he could reach those goals. And it took him 1.5 more years. And I saw him on a regular basis because I thought it was very important that he knew that there was someone monitoring his study process. But 1.5 years later, he got his diploma. And that's, as I said, that is not so much he was very grateful for that to me. But of course, I was also very grateful to him because he did it.
Sure. Yeah.
So I think that's a very powerful technique because with clinical psychologists usually do, okay, so yeah, what happened in the past and what went wrong, and that's negative psychology, and it can work, sure, and we've come pretty far. But if you focus on the solutions, you can also get pretty far.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful success story as well. Unfortunately, we are almost through our time. So if you have any questions that you still want to ask, now is the time. And I saw another question that I think is a great question for Vincent, because Martijn wants to know, what are the best techniques to promote an attitude of gratitude?
Yes, I think the book I mentioned, Dankbaarheid, Gratitude by Ballmeyer, is a wonderful book. It's a book which takes you at the hand and shows you that in your situation there are things to be grateful for, and you got to learn to see them. And it is like Sibe said, you've got to go to your own life and see what should I be grateful for. We've got the expression count your blessings, tel je zegeningen, which is very important. He tells about keeping a gratitude diary. Mia Leijsen says the same thing to a person who is very unhappy, and the little things you see, a lovely bird on a tree, it starts with small things, and then it can get bigger. So in your own life, it's your mindset. You've got to learn to see it. And if you focus too much, like Sibe said, focusing too much on the problems is a thing. So maybe a little addition to that. There's many kinds of meditations. You can sit, you can watch your breath, you can walk in nature, but there's also laughing meditation. I've got it takes too much time if I have to look it up. There's a book, Laughing Meditation. So everybody makes up the top 3 most difficult problems, and you're going to laugh in a group about your problem. And at first it doesn't feel very natural to go laugh, but after a while the whole group is roaring with laughter, and this also does something with your body and makes things get loose. And on the other part, which is more maybe negative psychology, Eckhart Tolle, Eckhart Tolle is a wonderful spiritual, maybe the most famous spiritual teacher of our time. There's a word, it's called a pain body, a pijnlichaam. Everybody knows about addictions on alcohol, nicotine, games, sex, sweets. But if you've got some pains, some experience difficult things in your life, and you build an identity around that, that's me, the unhappy me. Let me tell me your story. I'm very unhappy. This is a fictitious self. You're almost in love with the fictitious unhappy self. And if you can see that as part of you, the pain body, which is only part of you, but if you identify with it, you go through life as your pain body. So Eckhart Tolle is also a wonderful teacher, and you can use voice dialogue as well. So those are a few advices.
Okay. I think this is also related to another question from Anouk. And she wants to know, in the current situation, people may be more likely to live in the now or follow other advices or ways of life, like you mentioned, after being thrown back to their core or main priorities. And do you think this will stick after COVID, or are we going right back on track in our high-paced, busy society?
Is it for me? For Sibe? Well, every obstacle can bring you deeper to your center or can make you more unhappy. And some people are driven by COVID, and restrictions are making really a priority. They're eating more healthy, they're sporting, they're more kind, they're more loving. But other people are more busy than ever, always on the internet because they must Zoom and etc. And relations are under enormous pressure because everybody's home all the time, and you've got to do things with the children. So it's not the case that everybody is getting more at the center because of COVID and restrictions, but it is a chance. Any obstacle is a chance to go deeper, or to lose yourself in problems. And it's an opportunity you should take. It's like Rumi. Rumi is also a great spiritual teacher. He says, whatever stands in the way is the way. The obstacles you've got on your path, you can say, oh, gee, another obstacle. I've solved this and another obstacle. But if you act as if you've chosen them, and if you don't expect life to be easy, you can work with them and go deeper. And the question asked after COVID, I think it is still up to you if you use the challenges in your life to go deeper or not. And after COVID, you'll have other challenges. There will be your relationship, there will be your job, we're only for a very short time in our comfort zone, so we could enjoy that. But there will always be obstacles, and you can transform them.
Okay.
Can I say something? Because I have a crystal ball here.
Ah, wow.
So I can look in the future. But I think it's a very difficult question, but it's a very good question. Because of course we have other problems as well. We don't only have the virus. We also have the climate problem. We also have the Black Lives Matter problem. So we have a society which is in turmoil in many ways. And Corona is just one thing, but I think that we should, that consciousness is the key. So we should be conscious that these things are changing. And also we should be conscious that the bumps on the road are opportunities. and that they can be given to us to get stronger and be more wise. So I don't know where this will go. It may very well be when COVID's finished that we start flying around all over the globe and pollute the earth again very much. And I don't know, that may happen. But what I'm hoping is that there will be a consciousness of what is important to us. And if you are forced to take care of your children, for example, whereas before COVID, you didn't need to do that, this may also lead to a consciousness how important your children are to you.
That's true.
So but it's not necessarily, but I think consciousness is the key. If we use if we're conscious of what is happening, and if we draw lessons from that, I think it could be. I'm optimistic. I'm an optimist. So I believe that things could get better.
Definitely, sure.
Definitely, thank you. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you, Sibe and Vincent.
Thank you.
I was wondering if there's any last piece of advice you would like to leave us with. So, Sibe, do you have any last words of wisdom?
You know, this is something that the Untutorials taught me. You can laugh without a joke. You can, and it feels good. Laugh. And
Vincent?
I want to quote Sibe because consciousness is the key, and I thought there was a lovely last word, so I quote the master. Consciousness is the key.
Thank you. I'm grateful to you, Vincent. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And also everyone watching at home for asking the questions and watching. And yeah, as you might know, we will be back next week with another talk, which will be with the students from the Domcast who are going to teach us all about the mysteries of Utrecht they have uncovered. So we hope to see you then. But for now, one last thank you for Sibe and Vincent.
Thank you.
And I want to wish everyone a nice evening.